Welcome everyone, welcome ندا نشات. سلام، خیلی خوش اومدید همگی و سلام به ندا نشات. This is the 32 session public session of the campaign Stop Honor Killings. این 32مین جلسه عمومی کمپین توقف قتلهای ناموسی هست. در این جلسه خانم نایرh، دکتر نایرh توحیدی مدیریتور برنامه هست، خانم روبینه شفیعی مترجم و خانم ندا نشات هم سخنران این برنامه هست. ندا نشات در مورد جنبش زنان در مصر، چالش ها و فرصت ها صحبت می کنن و ما در خدمتشون هستیم. نایرh جون بفرمایید.
سلام و درود به همگی. I don't know what your time is, but here is morning, so good morning, good time, wherever you are. Good afternoon, good evening. Welcome everyone. I'm very happy to meet another comrade, another friend, colleague from Egypt. I was in Egypt in 2013. So very interesting time, very exciting time. Without any further ado, let me introduce Ms. Neda Neshat, who is currently the Advocacy Coordinator and Project Manager at the Center for Egyptian Women's Legal Assistance, based in Cairo, Egypt. She has participated in different international events related to human rights and women's rights, such as the Commission on the Status of Women's discussions on post-2015 Fund for Development Conference, African regional meetings on Beijing Platform for Action, and Commission on the Status of Women. And she's also responsible for conducting different campaigns to promote women and human rights. Neda has lectured students in different universities on women's rights situation in Egypt at Harvard, State University of New York, Columbia, Northeastern University, and the American University in Cairo. Previously, Neda was the coordinator of amending the personal status law project for the same organization to promote access to justice and eradicate inequality between genders, and also the coordinator of a project on engaging women leaders in combating corruption. Neda graduated in 2011 with bachelor's degree in physics and in 2020 with a bachelor's degree in law. احتیاج هست من این رو ترجمه کنم یا شما روی خانم شفیعی شما ترجمه میکنین وایاشونو؟
بله، من یه مقداری ترجمه کردم، یه چیزایی شما اضافه کردین، در نتیجه میکنم همین که ترجمه کردم از روی بیان قبلی. بله، ندا نشات هماهنگ کننده مرکز یاری رسانی حقوقی به زنان مصر می باشد و همچنین هماهنگ کننده کمپین تصحیح قانون شرایط فرد به اصطلاح برای دسترسی به عدالت و از میان بردن تبعیضات جنسیتی.
ببخشید، در واقع ما در ایران بهش میگیم قوانین مربوط به احوال شخصیه.
بله، نشنیده بودم این اصطلاح.
بله.
ندا نشات در فعالانه در بسیاری از کنوانسیون ها و نشست های بین المللی شرکت کرده. در نشست کمیسیون موقعیت زن، نشست سازمان ملل موقعیت زن، در کنفرانس بیجینگ و همچنین در دانشگاه‌های مختلف سخنرانی داشته و در سازمانی که برای عدالت و عدالت جنسیتی طراحی شده بود همچنین فعالیت داشته و در مباحثاتی که در سال 2015 برای تهیه بودجه برای توسعه و موضوعات مشابه در برابری جنسیتی و زنان بوده هم شرکت داشته است. این خلاصه هستش که من اینجا داشتم از زندگی نامه بسیار درخشان نادا نشات.
Thank you. Ruhi Jan. So the plan is here today for Ms. Neda Neshat to speak for about 20 minutes or so, and then we will open it for question and answer with the audience. I may have also a couple of questions for her as moderator, and so that's how we. Is that okay with you, Neda? Okay. So please. The microphone is open. No, your mic is not open. Okay, yeah, please go ahead. We are all listening. We are all listening.
No, can I just ask that you just talk about, say, for 2-3 sentences together, and then let me, translate them.
Perfect.
Okay, because if it's more than that, I would forget what you said.
Sure, I'll share my screen right now. Sorry.
Okay.
Okay. So I cannot share my screen. It's fine. Type.
Pari, could you please co-host Neda? She wants to share her PowerPoint.
She has a PowerPoint that she wants to share with us.
Yeah, it's a small PowerPoint. If I can share it, it's fine. It just
no, you can share. Let me co-host you. You can share it. Just hold on. Okay. Just hold on in a second. Okay, now you can share.
Sure. So you can see my screen right now, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
Perfect.
Yes.
Yeah. So I just wanted to start by, so thank you so much first for inviting me to be in this meeting. I wanted to start my presentation with some facts regarding why we have, first, why there is so much violence against women in Egypt. Do you want to translate that, Rabina? Okay.
روحی جان.
صحبتی که نادا میخوان شروع بکنن با این سوال به اصطلاح آغاز میشه که چرا در مصر این همه خشونت علیه زنان وجود داره. Thank you.
Yeah, so the first part is there is so much legal discrimination in the penal codes where women and men, they do not enjoy the same rights at all. Okay.
Okay. اولین سوال این هستش که چرا این همه تبعیض علیه زنان هست و نابرابری بین مردان و زنان. Thank you.
So the bigger picture is, or the bigger rule that we learn at law school, for example, is that any law is supposed to be free from all prejudice, from any judgments, and it has to be a common ground, and it has to be any crime is punishable for the crime, not by the perpetrator himself or herself.
بله. اولین ایشون میگن که اولین به اصطلاح نکته این هستش که قانون باید برابر باشه، قانونی باشه که بتونه حفظ بکنه فرد و نه اینکه خود فرد اون کسی که به اصطلاح مورد خشونت قرار گرفته خود اون باشه به اصطلاح مورد سوال قرار بگیری یا پرسش قرار بگیری یا گناهکار شناخته بشه. Thank you.
So starting by this, we can see in the penal code itself that there is a huge discrimination when it comes to a crime such as adultery or fornication, because women and men under this specific crime, they are treated differently.
تبعیض زیادی هست بین زنان و مردان در مواردی که زنا به اصطلاح اتفاق بیفته، در روابطی که زن و مرد خارج از ازدواج دارن. اتفاقی که میفته برخورد بین با زنان و مردان بسیار متفاوت و بسیار تبعیض‌آمیز علیه زنان هست.
So for women, for example, women can commit in the law or in the articles, women can commit fornication or adultery in any place, including the marital house. So just to give you a hint, fornication and adultery, it's a special crime where only married people can be charged with this crime. So if I'm not married, I can never be charged with such crime. Common or consensual relationships are not a crime in Egypt.
اوکی. طبق گفته ایشون زنا به اون معنایی که ما میشناسیمش جرم نیست اگر که به خصوص با رضایت دو طرف صورت گرفته باشه.
ببخشید، زنا اصلا مفهوم زنا در واقع فورنیکیشن مفهومه که در ازدواج بر بین افرادی که مزدوج هستن صورت میگیره. اینجا منظور رابطه جنسی فقط نیست، رابطه جنسی برای زن شوهردار یا مرد زنداره. برای همین ایشون میگن که اینو با تفکیک قائل بشیم بین یک رابطه جنسی بین دو نفر که با هم توافق دارن. اون جرم نیست در قانون مصر. آنچه که جرمه رابطه افرادی که آلردی مزدوج هستن ولی با افراد دیگه، در واقع یه چیتینگ اینجا داره میگه، خیانت که میگه متفاوت، یعنی خود کلمه زنا مخصوص این نوع رابطه است. به همین دلیل شما ترجمه درستی کردید که کلمه زنا رو به کار بردید.
مرسی.
So zina, قانون الزنا, I guess this is also is understood. Okay, so قانون الزنا in Egypt, for example, if a woman committed the crime, the conditions are completely different from the man's committing the crime. So a woman can be charged with zina if she was caught in the marital house or outside of the marital house. She can be caught in action or by claiming that she was having an affair, for example. While for men, they can only be charged with zina only if they are caught in action in the marital bed. It has to be in the marital house. So if he was cheating on his wife in a hotel, for example, this is not considered a crime in the penal code.
چیزی که ایشون میگن برخورد با مسئله زنا بین مرد و زن متفاوته، در حالی که زن رو در هر شرایطی که ببینن با مرد دیگه هستش میتونن مورد سوال قرار بدن، ولی مرد رو فقط اگر که در خونه خودش مرتکب زنا شده باشه مورد سوال قرار میگیره، ولی مثلا اگر توی یک هتل با زن دیگه ببینن اون مورد سوال نیست و اون به اصطلاح جرم نیستش.
And even if both went to court, for example, so if a woman went to court, she is subjected to 2 years in prison, while a man is subjected to 6 months in prison for the same crime.
بله، حتی اگه وقتی که مسئله به دادگاه کشیده بشه به همون به اصطلاح به همون جرمی که مشابه هست زن و مرد، حالا بگیم کلمه خیانت یا زنا رو به کار بردن، زن به 2 سال زندان و مرد به 6 ماه زندان محکوم میشه. بنابراین این تفاوت و تبعیض کاملا آشکارا و ظاهرا در قانون وجود داره.
And even in the crime itself, in the punishment itself, it opens a door for honor crimes, because a man has the right to ask pardoning his wife who is in prison because of zina, for example, but the state does not follow up on what will happen to this woman after she gets out of prison, because many men, this is what they would do. they will report their wives, make sure that she spends some time in jail, but when she comes, and then afterwards he would go to the judge and says, I have forgave her, please let her out. Once this happens, we have no recording whatsoever if this woman is alive, is she subjected to violence or not. There is no follow-up whatsoever. So it opens a huge door for honor killings without getting any reporting. And it's not the same right for women, by the way. So a woman cannot go to the judge and say, I forgive my husband. It's not permissible.
بله. در مواردی که زن به خاطر زنا به زندان میره، مرد میتونه بره و تقاضا بکنه که زن بخشیده بشه و از زندان قبل از اتمام دوران حبسش از زندان آزاد بشه. منتها این به این معنا نیستش که زن بخشیده بشه یا اینکه بدونن، هیچ رکوردی میگن هیچ چیزی نیستش که بدونن بعد از اون چه به سر این زن میاد که وقتی که از زندان خارج میشه. و این خشونتی که خشونت‌های ناموسی یا کشتار یا هر چی که میشه، میگن داکیومنت نمیشه، به اصطلاح ثبت جای نمیشه، ولی بعد از اینکه زن آزاد میشه میتونه که مورد خشونت از طرف شوهر قرار بگیره، ولی اطلاع دقیق در دست نیستش از این زن.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Another article, for example, is if a husband caught his wife in bed with someone and he killed her. In this, this specific article says that the husband is not going to be charged with a felony, Ginaya, as we call it in Arabic. He's going to be charged with gunha, with a misdemeanor. So that means if he killed her, he gets up to 3 years in prison instead of a life imprisonment, for example, or a capital punishment. And again, it's not the same for wives. If a wife caught her husband in bed with someone else and she kills him, she gets the full sentence.
اگر که مردی زنش رو در حال زنا یا در حال به اصطلاح رابطه جنسی با مرد دیگه‌ای ببینه و اون زن رو بکشه، جریمه به اصطلاح زندانی که برای
قتل حساب نمیشه. قتل
بله.
حساب نمیشه.
به حساب نمیاد. بله. و به اصطلاح زندان خیلی کمی بهش میدن، چند سال خیلی کم میدن، در حالی که اگه همین اتفاق بیفته، یعنی زنی مرد شوهرش رو ببینه با زن دیگه ای رابطه جنسی داره و شوهرش رو بکشه، کاملا چندین سال به اصطلاح زندان بهش داده میشه و این تفاوت در قانون هستش بین زنای مرد و زنای زن.
Okay.
So far, so similar to Iranian law.
More or less.
So far, yeah.
Very, very similar.
They all have the same mentality.
Yes.
Third part, for example, again, in the penal code, there is no mention of the word honor in the penal code. It's left to the judge's, mentality, or was what we call the discretionary power. So in crimes of the so-called honor, what we see is that the judge would use Article 17 that allows him to lower the sentences for certain crimes or for certain perpetrators. And most of the time, the judge would justify in his verdict that instead of punishing this man who killed his sister, his cousin, his whatever female relative of his, instead of punishing him with the full punishment, he would give him lower sentence. The judge would refer to Article 17 of the Penal Code.
بله، در موارد قتلهای ناموسی که ظاهراً لایحه 17 قانون مجازات اسلامی اگر که اشتباه نکنم در مصر هستش، اگر مردی به اصطلاح قتل ناموسی مرتکب قتل ناموسی بشه، یعنی زن یا خواهرش یا هر کسی رو بکشه، جزای خیلی کمتری میگیره، یعنی کامل به اصطلاح نه به اعدام محکوم میشه نه به حبس خیلی طولانی، جزای خیلی چند سال به اصطلاح خیلی کمتری رو زندان براش بریده میشه.
Another article
ببخشید اینم خوبه اضافه کنیم که تاکید میکردن باز مثل ایران که قاضی اینجا خیلی نقش بازی میکنه، یعنی به سلیقه‌ای به تعبیر خودش تصمیم میگیره.
ظاهراً بله.
Another article, which is Article 60, and I wrote the article here. It says it justifies domestic violence because we are taught again in law schools that a man has the right to discipline his wife. A teacher has a right to discipline his student. So this specific article, Article 60, it opens the door for, again, the judge's mentality and discretionary power to interpret this article the way they want in domestic cases, domestic violence cases. The article says, the provisions of the penal code shall not apply to any deeds committed in good faith pursuant to a right determined by the virtue of Sharia.
Okay. ماده 60 قانون جزا میگه که در خشونت‌های خانگی، در موارد خشونت‌های خانگی و حتی در مواردی که در مدارس معلم به کودک خشونت میکنه، یعنی کتک میزنه، هر دو حق دارن، یعنی هر دو تا مجازات نمیشن و جزای زیادی، به اصطلاح مجازات زیادی براشون تعیین نمیشه، به دلیل اینکه در قانون شریعت هستش که اینا حق دارن که کتک بزنن یا خشونت کنن به هر شکلی.
So, of course, all of these laws created some sort of impunity for men in our country to commit the crimes, and they are sure that somehow they are going to escape it, either because the law is on their side or because the culture is on their side.
معمولاً اگر مردی مرتکب جرم بشه، جنایت بشه، آنچنان به اصطلاح مجازات نمیشه به دو دلیل. یکی این که در قانون مجازات خیلی سختی برای مرد در نظر گرفته نشده و یکی این که خود فرهنگ عامه طرف مرد هست. بنابراین اتفاقی که میفته در موارد خشونت به هر شکلی که باشه مردان مجازات خیلی کمتری میگیرن یا اصولا مجازات نمیشه.
So, for example, last year we have seen recordings of 4 killings in the streets. Nayerh Ashraf, Salma Bahgat, Amani, and Khulud. These are 4 women. They have lost their lives in broad daylight in the streets just because they said no to some people who proposed to them. And we've documented that many others, they didn't go to the police, and I am going to explain why they didn't go to the police later. But they didn't go to the police, and they were receiving the same threats. I'm going to kill you like Nayerh Ashraf.
نمونه 4 قتل رو میگن که اتفاق افتاده، 4 زن به قتل رسیدن. این در روز روشن بوده، در زمانی بوده که این زنان به افرادی که بهشون نزدیک میشدن، حالا هر تقاضای جنسی داشتن یا هر شکلی بوده که زنان نمیخواستن و نگفتن به این افراد، کشته شدن و مجازاتی برای این قضیه یعنی اتفاق نیفتاده، مجازات نشدن افرادی رو که قاتلین این 4 زن.
Yeah. So also,
Neda, can you say what year this was?
This was last year, 2022.
So very recent.
This is very recent, yes. The killings went viral on Facebook, on YouTube. The videos are still there, unfortunately. But these were recording. One of them, she was killed in front of her university. That's Nayerh. Another, she was killed on her way to the exams. These are, I think this was Salma. 2 others, they were in their own neighborhood. They were stalked by their ex-fiancés just because they said no, they don't want to return to them, and they were also killed in the streets. All of them are recorded. Also, a drug association. Yeah, do you want
punishment?
Yeah.
No punishment for them?
They are so far. They are all in prison. The first two killers, the killer of Nayerh and killer of Selma, they got a capital punishment, so they are sentenced to be executed. However, they are in the cassation form right now, so they are appealing the case, claiming that they were not in their sanity.
خب اتفاقی که افتاده این 4 قاتل 2 نفرشون به اعدام محکوم شدن و 2 نفرشون به حبس و اون 2 نفری که به اعدام محکوم شدن الان دارن تقاضا میدن که و میگن که در زمانی که به اصطلاح کشتن اون 2 زن رو کشتن در شرایط روحی مناسبی نبودن، بنابراین احتمال داره که از اعدام نجات پیدا کنن.
Yeah. So there is also recorded of the 30 attempted murder, the same way as Nayerh and Selma as well. These murders or these attempted murders were documented by Advocacy Association, which is a statistics association working on different agendas in Egypt.
30 قتل دیگه هم به گفته ایشون گزارش شدن که به همین شکل بوده، یعنی 30 زن دیگه هم به همین شکل کشته شدن و اینا داکیومنت شدن به اصطلاح در وجود دارن، در گزارشات و در اسناد وجود دارن. But you don't know what happened to the murderers.
The accused are most probably they are in prison right now if they are caught, but the problem is even with the sentences, and yani, as long as there is no major crime happened for the state, like killing in broad daylight, most probably they give them lower sentences, or they give them or they just lock them up for quite some time, and that's it. And again, no protection for these women whatsoever.
attempted بوده، یعنی قتل صورت هنوز نگرفته بوده، تلاش کردن که بکشن که برای همینم در زندان.
آره کشوندن در واقع، نتونستن ثابت بکنن که در واقع اینا کشتن.
نه قتل هنوز صورت نگرفته. Maybe she should explain this. Ada, when you said these were attempted murder, can you explain like what happened exactly? Were they injured but not dead, or there was plan to kill them, or?
No, they were attacked. So these women were attacked. In order to be charged with attempted murder in the penal code, you have to be attacked. These women were attacked, even if there are no injuries, but as long as there is an attack and there are witnesses to these attacks, then the perpetrator will be charged with attempted murder. So it varies. And here is, again, this is just to explain a little bit here on this point. So even it's not necessarily that if a woman was attacked that the perpetrator is going to be charged with attempted murder. There was a video of a woman who was attacked in a pharmacy in Egypt because the perpetrator wanted the girl to marry his brother, and the sound was extremely visible. He was saying, "I will kill you," and he was beating her up inside, and she even lost consciousness inside the pharmacy. And he was not charged with attempted murder. He was charged with assault and had 1 month in prison. Zero protection whatsoever. The girl herself, she went on a video saying, "I'm afraid." She's 19, by the way. She was saying, "I'm afraid for my life. There is no protection whatsoever." And he only got 1 month in prison.
ظاهرا مشکل این هستش که وقتی مردی زنی رو تهدید میکنه قضیه یا جدی گرفته نمیشه یا اینکه گزارش نمیشه به اون شکل، و این در یک مورد میگن که دختر جوان 19 ساله‌ای در داروخانه مورد حمله قرار میگیره و مرد بهش میگه که این کسی بوده که بهش تازه ازدواج شده بوده و دختر رد کرده بوده و مرد میگه که من تو رو میکشم و این ریکورد شده بوده، اونجا ضبط شده بوده، اما مرد فقط فکر میکنم که اون به 1 ماه زندان محکوم شده و چیز دیگه ای اتفاق نیفتاده، یعنی مجازات دیگه ای نگرفته. Okay.
So last year also in 2022, the National Council of Women, which is the women's rights machinery in Egypt, they have produced a report on violence against women. And they mentioned that 3/4 of women in Egypt, or 75% of women in Egypt, were subjected to different forms of violence.
Okay, در 2022 گزارشی مرکز حقوق زنان گزارشی تهیه کردن و گفتن که به چه شکل زنان مورد خشونت قرار میگیرن و do I understand that it was just a report?
It was a report, it was a study they issued on their website.
این به اصطلاح گزارشی بودش که از تحقیقاتی که کرده بودن در مورد نابرابری حقوق زنان در قانون زنان و مردان که تهیه کرده بودن.
That's very important. That's an official report. So
yes,
75% of women are
75%, exactly. And this is the point where the problem lies, really, because the National Council of Women finally admitting that women in Egypt are subjected to violence. But then when we evaluate what the National Council is really doing for women, it's completely different scenario. They are not as responsive as they should be. They are still very patriarchal themselves. So they have, their limitation is whatever the president say. So if the president say that our priority is the family law, then they are going to focus on family law. They are not going to focus on creating a comprehensive law to combat violence against women. So we as feminist groups in Egypt and feminist movement in Egypt, we do have a huge problem with the current administration of the National Council of Women because they are not doing their job.
That's why I paused on this, because it's important for everybody to know that in Egypt, especially currently, as it was the case during Mubarak and during previous president, the government has taken over the women's issues and governmentalized it. So it's a kind of a state feminism, so-called, but it's not even that much effective as state feminism. So the National Council of Women is like سازمان ملی زنان مصر، ولی در همونطور که ایشون هم توضیح دادم و خب خیلی مطالعاتم در این باره شده، کاملا دولتیه، تحت کنترل دولته و برای همین هم هست که خیلی هاش فرمایشی و میگن و یه سری وعده ها میدن ولی در عمل برای تغییر وضعیت زنان کاری نمی کنن. ایشون هم داشتن اینو میگفتن. حالا همین که این ریپورت رو دادن میگن مهمه که قبول کرده خود مثل انجمن ملی یا شورای ملی زنان مصر که 75% زنان تحت نوعی از خشونت قرار میگیرن در زندگیشون. Sorry, I wanted to also explain that because again there are similarities.
Yep.
That there are patterns very common in the North Africa.
Yes, there is a huge similarity between the context in Egypt and the context of Iran, especially. And that's why maybe if I want to just to move away for a minute from the presentation, that's why when the Muslim Brotherhood came to power in 2012 or 2013, many people were comparing the Egyptian revolution with the Iranian revolution at that time, having Islam taking over. But the difference here is that we have a completely different army role. So they were never going to have as much power as what happened in Iran, for example. We have a much more powerful army, and that's why we're super militarized at that point. Yes.
بله اینجا تفاوت یا تشابه بین قوانینی که در ایران هست و قوانینی که در مصر به خصوص در زمانی که اخوان المسلمین در 2012 و 13 قدرت داشتن، ایشون میگن خیلی مشابه هست. شرایط که ما میدونیم که مشابه هست به خاطر اینکه قوانین مشابهی رو چیز میکردن. تنها تفاوت این هستش که در مصر ارتش قویه و میدونیم که ارتش هم بعد اخوان المسلمین رو بیرون کرد و قدرت رو در دست گرفت و در ایران اون ارتش نیست، ولی میدونیم که در ایران سپاه پاسداران داریم که در جهت حمایت دولت خیلی کار.
Oh, yeah. So also here, there are some numbers here. The last numbers that we have are from 2017 on the status of violence against women, exactly. Because the state, we have a problem of the right to information in general. So in a dictatorship, you will never be able to access true or even basic information or statistics. So the last statistics that we have is from 2017, where the central agency for statistics in Egypt, they said that 37% of women in Egypt, they were subjected to physical violence between the ages of 19 to 69. One thing here that we need to understand, these numbers are based on the women who reported the violence against them. It's not on the bigger scope. So if 37% of women were able to report physical violence, that means that the true number is much, much higher than this.
آماری میگن آمار دقیقی نیستش در خشونت علیه زنان، ولی در 2017 تونستن آماری به دست بیارن که 37% از زنانی که مورد خشونت قرار گرفته بودن بین سن 19 تا 69 که ثبت کرده بودن، یعنی ثبت شده بود، 37% زنان وجود بودن که این آمار رو ارائه دادن، یعنی دارن در دست. ولی خود ایشون میگن که این آمار بسیار بالاتر از 37%، ولی چون ثبت نشده جایی نمیدونن، چه اطلاعی نیستش که چند درصد زنان در واقع به طور کلی مورد خشونت قرار گرفتن.
Yeah, same here happens with sexual violence, where the same report mentioned that 14.5% of women were subjected to sexual violence, for example. And what was interesting in that report is that fathers are the main perpetrator in physical violence crimes for girls who turn, or for women who turn 18 years old. So once the girl reaches the age of 18, she's more likely to be beaten by her father more than anyone else in the family.
در مورد خشونت جنسی حدود 14% که آماری رو دارن، عامل اصلی خشونت پدران بودن در خونه، به خصوص خشونت علیه دخترانی که به سن حدود 19 سال میرسن معمولا مورد خشونت پدر قرار میگیرن. و اینجا البته به نظر من نمیگن که چه نوع خشونتی هستش، شاید فقط کتک زدن باشه یا ما نمیدونیم. Do you know what type of violence is it? Is it just beating or?
So physical violence. By father, it's physical violence. So beating and torturing, anything under the broader name of physical violence.
Thank you. Okay.
Yeah.
خشونت به شکنجه، کتک، به هر صورت. Thank you.
Yeah. The ironic part is that in 2015, the National Council of Women, they published a strategy, so a strategic plan to combat violence against women. And they said that this strategy is going to be covering from 2015 till 2020. The irony here is that despite they had the strategy, they never published a law on violence against women. They indeed have amended some articles in the penal code related to sexual harassment or female genital mutilation, for example, but the word violence itself, it was never, ever identified or mentioned throughout the whole law.
شورایی که بر به اصطلاح شورای دولتی که برنامه‌ریزی برای زنان میکنه در سال 2015 تا بین 2015 و 2020 برنامه‌ای تهیه کرد که در اون به اصطلاح قانونی تصویب بکنن که با خشونت علیه زنان برخورد بشه، ولی این به این شکل نبودش که واقعا انتشار پیدا بکنه یا اینکه به طور عملی اجرا بشه، یعنی موقعیت اجرایی داشته باشه.
Okay, so what? Sorry.
It wasn't approved by the parliament. You said it wasn't even approved.
No,
who was supposed to approve it?
No, the strategic plan is approved itself, but the law
the law was never approved.
The law was never approved by the parliament. So the cycle is that they are supposed to present the law to the parliament, and then the parliament shall approve it. The problem is the law itself, it was never discussed, although twice it was submitted to the parliament twice in this current the current one and the previous parliament. They both did not mention the violence against women at all, and the National Council, unfortunately, they did not even push for the negotiations in the parliament.
So again, very similar to Iran. There was a big talk and a lot of rhetoric about a law, لایحه خشونت‌ها. یادتونه برای چیزهای جزایی تو ایران خشونت و اینا، این همیشه تو مجلس موند، هیچ وقت it just was like archived in the parliament, never discussed, never, like very similar to Iran. Even though it was the office of the women's affairs of the government that proposed that that legislation. But
yes, yeah, same in Egypt. So we had the law proposed by the National Council, we have the law proposed by task force of NGOs. They didn't even bother to discuss it.
اینجا بحث شباهتی هستش که نیر جان میگن که با اتفاقاتی که در ایران افتاده، یعنی همون چیزایی رو که زنان در ایران پیشنهاد کردن به دولت و هیچ وقت اجرا نشد و چیز نشد، در مصر هم همینه، یعنی ما شباهت خیلی زیادی داریم.
Yeah, so what are some of the challenges that we faced? First of all, we have ineffective restraining orders, meaning that the killings, for example, so back to the 4 killings that happened last year in broad daylight, each one of these girls have filed several restraining orders, but they were never taken seriously. And that was a question actually to the Ministry of Interior that they never responded to. Like many people, whether on social media, whether on, of course, the parliament didn't have the guts to ask the ministry this question, but this question was all there. If we have restraining orders, where were the police? Why they didn't do anything? So the restraining orders are completely ineffective at this stage.
مسائلی رو یا موانعی رو که باهاش برخورد میکنن اینجا دارن یکی ایشون میگن. یکی این که زمانی رو که به اصطلاح دستور صادر میشه که اون کسی که میخواد دنبال بکنه زنی رو یا مورد خشونت قرار بده، دستور صادر میشه که جلوگیری بکنن از نزدیکی اون فرد با زن، ولی این هیچ وقت اجرا نمیشه. یعنی میگن که این هرگز اجرا نشده. از وزارت کشورشون هم سوال کردم که چرا این قانون در حالی که وجود داره ولی اجرا نمیشه و میگن که هرگز پاسخی داده نشد.
Yeah. So the second challenge also that we have is the stigma, because many women, they are afraid to go to the police because there will be socially stigmatized all the time that she, for example, she's reporting her, especially if she's coming from middle class, she would not go to report her husband or her brother or her father. such cases of violence, and sometimes she doesn't want to admit to herself that she was subjected to violence as well. So the stigma also is a huge hinder towards reporting such cases.
برچسب زنی یا اینکه به اصطلاح گفتن اینکه زنی گزارش بخواد بده خشونت علیه خودش رو، چه از طرف برادرش، پدرش یا هر کسی بوده، چون که یه نوع برچسب به اصطلاح حیثیتی به زن زده میشه، به خصوص از طبقه متوسط که باشه. خیلی از زنها اصولا مایل نیستن که برن گزارش کنن این خشونت رو، به دلیل اینکه بعداً خودشون از نظر حیثیتی، آبرو یا هر چی بگیم اینا بهشون این برچسب زده میشه و مایل نیستن که این برچسب رو بخورن.
So culture also is a huge problem, whether in the media, in education, in the law. So as the law, I told you about some of the discriminatory articles, but in the media, for example, it's not allowed on national TV culturally to broadcast a kiss, for example. So we used to have them in our old movies. In our new movies, for example, a kiss is a huge frowned upon move, for example. But it's completely normal to find two people or a man beating a wife in cinemas and in everyday TV. And for them, that's completely okay. And by them here, I mean the audience and the government itself.
فرهنگ غالب بر جامعه مصری رو ایشون میگن که این فرهنگی هستش که به اصطلاح موجب خشونت علیه زنان میشه در میدیا، در به اصطلاح تمام میدیا، چه تلویزیون و چه اشکال دیگه میدیا. به عنوان مثال میگن که اگر زنی مردی رو ببوسه توی فیلمی فرض کنیم یا بالعکس خیلی سر و صدا و اعتراض علیهش میشه، اما اگر در همون فیلم مردی زنی رو کتک بزنه انگار که بخشی از فرهنگ و اشکالی نداره.
Also the ineffective law enforcement, especially in domestic violence cases. So if I'm a woman whose father beaten her up and I decided to go to the police station to report him, the police station will never file the report against my father, because for them this is shameful. You're reporting your father, you are the one with the trouble, the father is disciplining you. So all the time, whenever there is a violence case, so the father especially is this is an example, but it happens throughout the whole cases. If I'm accusing a brother, their husband, sometimes they accept it, sometimes they don't. So, but they don't get that there are some cases of domestic violence that they need to be reported officially. The law enforcement, they don't do that, because their own culture is that, so what, he's beating you, what's your problem?
اجرای قانون توسط مجریان قانون میگن که در موارد خشونت علیه زنان اصلا اجرا نمیشه، به دلیل اینکه اگر زنی بره به ایستگاه پلیس و بگه پدرم منو زد، اصولا بهش گوش نمیکنن، میگن خب پدرت زد، تربیتت کرد حتما و حق داشت یا هرچی. و این در مورد فرض کنیم برادرام همین شکل، شاید در مورد شوهر کمی گوش بکنن به حرف زن، ولی در مورد پدر به خصوص مورد احترام هستش و به حرف زن گوش نمیکنن که موارد خشونت رو ثبت بکنن و یا دنبال بکنن. Thank you.
Yeah, so and also that some cases, even if they are reported in the law, we have something called the description of the case or description of the crime. Most probably, they will not refer to it as violence against women, part of it because it's not mentioned in the law, and part of it because the law enforcement does not understand the words. So we do have incorrect documentation of cases. So in case of honor crimes, for example, they would maybe they would put it under it's a crime, so it's a killing crime. But then in the case itself, in the case files, they would say, well, because this cousin or this brother or this father, he thought that this girl is doing something immoral. they decided to put that on the files, for example. Or in cases of trafficking, they will not file the case as trafficking, they would file the case as assault. Sometimes as prostitution even, where they actually, instead of protecting the victim, they would put the victim on trial because she's accused of prostitution. So the lack of documentation and the incorrect documentation also are a big challenge to us when getting the sense of where the violence now in Egypt.
خب مشکل دیگری که ایشون میگن عدم ثبت موارد خشونت علیه زنان هستش. یعنی اینکه وقتی که زنی میره به ایستگاه پلیس یا هر جای دیگه ای رو که قراره خشونتی رو که علیه شده ثبت بشه به حرفش گوش نمیکنن. در خیلی از موارد که به اصطلاح زنها رو به صورت برده جنسی یا بردگی جنسی مورد خشونت قرار میدن و این زن اگر بره و ادعا بکنه به اتهام فاحشگی گرفته میشه و به دادگاه برده میشه. بنابراین هم ثبت وقایع دقیق نیستش و هم این که اون واقعی که اتفاق میفته گاهن بر علیه خود زن به کار گرفته میشه.
Yes. Also, violence is not a priority agenda to the state. So, as I said before, there are the comprehensive law to combat violence. It was submitted to the parliament twice, and every time they put it on the side because there are more priority or pressing laws that need to be discussed. For example, the investment law, the terrorism law, but not violence against women. It's not on their priority.
موضوعی که اشاره میکنن این که خشونت علیه زنان، قانون خشونت علیه زنان یا قوانین خشونت علیه زنان که به پارلمان برده میشه اصولا مورد در اولویت قرار نمیگیره، برای اینکه پارلمان همیشه مسائل دیگه رو در اولویت قرار میده، مثلا مبارزه با تروریسم یا اینکه قوانینی که برای توسعه اقتصادی هستش. در نتیجه همیشه قوانینی رو که بر علیه خشونت علیه زنان به مجلس برده میشه همیشه در واقع کنار گذاشته میشن یا نمیدونم بایگانی میشه.
Yeah, so also the inability to assembly. So for us, as whether as a feminist group or an association or just activists, we have a problem of assembling because the law prohibits us from going on a demonstration, for example, or working properly on the ground because we do not have the same resources as the National Council of Women. And the National Council is not doing their job. So we end up in a zone where the efforts to do something to combat violence are extremely limited.
نکته رو که میگن این که فعالین زن نه اون قدرت رو دارن، نه از نظر حقوقی حمایت میشن، از نظر قانونی حمایت میشن که بتونن برن خیابون یا بتونن موارد رو به اصطلاح به طور عموم ارائه بدن، در حالی که این قدرت و شورای هماهنگی زنان که نهاد دولتی داره ولی در این مورد کاری انجام نمیده. اوکی.
And the last challenge, or in my list at least, it's the discretionary power of judges, where the judge, he has the power to, based on his own conviction, based on his own mentality, he would sentence a certain perpetrator to prison. So, for example, if he sees that this man is young and he still has a chance, even if he committed a crime like assault or rape or sexual harassment, most probably they are going to give them lower sentence. We documented a case where a young man, he was 21 years old, he kidnapped a girl. She was below the age of 18. He kidnapped her, raped her, and because she had a heart problem, so she had a heart attack out of the shock, and she died. The judge gave him 3 years in prison.
بله. آخرین نکته رو که اینجا میگن قدرتی هستش که قضات دادگاه ها دارن و قدرت شخصی، به اصطلاح تصمیمات شخصی که میگیرن در برابر افرادی رو که به دادگاه میرسه، جلوی قاضی میرسه. به عنوان مثال میگن که به عنوان مثال یک مرد جوان 21 ساله‌ای که به دختر 17 ساله‌ای تجاوز کرد و اون دختر ناراحتی قلبی داشت و دچار سکته قلبی شد و فوت کرد، قاضی فقط 3 سال به اون مرد حکم زندان داد. یعنی قدرت قاضی در دادگاه ها ظاهراً بسیار بالاست و بر علیه زنان هستش.
در واقع در ایران هم we have again this similar problem in Iran and they keep complaining many people about the حکم‌های سلیقه‌ای، همین لغت discretionary که اینجا به کار میبرن. در فارسی معمولا میگن سلیقه‌ای، یعنی بستگی به نظرگاه خود قاضی داره و سلیقش چی باشه و چگونه قانون رو تعبیر کنه. واقعا حکومت قانون نیست دیگه، حالا غیر از حالات نفوذ سیاسی سلیقه شخصی هم هست که we have the same problem.
Yeah, same problem. Yeah, so what are the opportunities that we have? And this is my last slide. So the first opportunity is that we have again submitted the law that was created or drafted by the task force of feminist groups to the parliament, demanding a comprehensive law for combating violence against women, and we have been pushing for it for quite a couple of years now, and we are getting some promises, at least from the parliament, that they are going to discuss it, but after the family law, because this is another issue.
اوکی. ایشون میگن که گروه‌های فمینیستی خب سعی میکنن که علیه خشونت به اصطلاح قانون خیلی جامعی رو ارائه بدن و این قانون جامعی رو تهیه کردن و به پارلمان در 2018 تا 2022 ارائه شده، این داده شده و امیدوارن که به اصطلاح پارلمان اون رو تصویب بکنه. ولی as I understand they haven't accepted, they haven't ratified the law.
No, it's pending discussion right now. So it collected the 60 signature in order to discuss it in the public session, but it's been postponed by the president of the parliament.
Okay. بنابراین این قانون اینجوری که ایشون میگن هنوز مورد بحث هستش و هنوز تصمیمی در مورد اون گرفته نشد.
Yeah, so the second opportunity is that we cannot, it is true that we cannot assembly or cannot be visible on the ground, but social media in Egypt is a huge tool for us. And the rising of feminist groups, especially on the social media, it's creating the discussion about violence, about what's consent, about what are the forms of assault that has to be stopped. And also we're trying to push the government through social media as much as we can, through campaigns, of course, and through statistics.
بله. با اومدن سوشال میدیا، یعنی میدیای جمعی که میدونیم در ایران هم هستش به همین شکل، گروه های فمینیستی گسترش بیشتری در مصر پیدا کردن برای اینکه خب دسترسی به میدیای جهان دارن و میتونن اینو به اصطلاح درک کنن که در جای دیگه چی میگذره. بنابراین امیدواری هستش که با رشد گروه‌های فمینیستی در مصر شاید بشه که تغییراتی ایجاد کرد. Okay.
And the last opportunity we have is the CEDAW, the Convention on Eliminating All Forms of Discrimination and Violence Against Women, and the UPR, Universal Periodic Review. So both recommendations, they clearly said that we need a law to combat violence against women in Egypt, and the state has agreed or has committed themselves to issue such a law. Yes, they didn't do anything so far, but at least we as an NGO, we can push them to commit to their international obligation. And one thing about Egypt really, the government, they love to have their international image in the better side. So they care a lot about their international image, about what the international community is going to say about them. So that's why these recommendations they are a huge tool for us to push for any amendments.
نکته‌ای که میگن که دارن تلاش میکنن این که مقابلنامه‌های بین‌المللی رو سعی کنن که حکومت امضا بکنه و قبول بکنه، به خصوص که با توجه به اینکه دولت مصر خیلی علاقه‌منده که جامعه جهانی به نوعی بهش نگاه کنه که یعنی
به چشم
پیشرفت. بله
به چشم خیلی براش مهمه.
مهمه
برخلاف حکومت ایران.
I think that contradicts Iran, right? Iran, they don't.
Right, unlike Iran, they don't
care about. Yeah, no. This is where the huge difference. Egypt cares about its international.
So you have an advantage there.
Yeah. So thank you. These are like I try to have a holistic overview about the situation in Egypt, but I'm open for any questions if you have any.
Very good.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. It was very helpful you just gave us a overall picture. Maybe let me ask you a question before we go to the audience. Is there any cooperation between independent feminist groups, grassroots feminists in Egypt and the National Council of Women? For example, do you put pressure on them when you the draft that you submitted to the parliament twice, right, in 2018 and 2022?
Yes.
Did you do this through the National Council of Women, or you could do it directly? And if you do it directly, do they take offense about that, or that why you are, going beyond us or around us, ignoring us, or what is the dynamics there? دارم میپرسم ازشون که رابطه جنبش مستقل زنان، گروه های فمینیستی مستقل از دولت که خیلی هم انتقاد دارن به این شورای ملی زنان که دولتیه چیه؟ آیا شما مثلا این درفتی که این لایحه‌ای رو که پیشنهاد کردین به پارلمان در 2 نوبت که هنوز همچنان مونده و روش هم کاری نمی‌کنن، آیا اینو از طریق همین شورای زنان انجام میدید یا خودتون مستقیم انجام میدین؟ و اگه مستقیم انجام میدین اونا خودشون بر نمیخوره بهشون بیان یه عامل مانعی بتراشن؟ رابطه مثلا این دینامیسم رابطه فمینیستا با دولت و ارگانهای زنان دولتی چیه؟
Yeah. So there is a love-hate relationship between the independent feminist groups and the National Council of Women, where we have to communicate with them because they are the national machinery, but they don't have to listen to us. So this is what they usually do, is that, okay, we know what you're doing, thank you. Sometimes they would invite us to some of their events or meetings. Sometimes they will not even consider that we are there. So it really depends, and it depends on each organization or group methodology of reaching out to the council. For us, we invite them anyways to all of our activities, but they never show up. Maybe they showed up once or twice, but because they don't like us, we're very critical of the council, and they know it, and we don't try to hide it, to be honest. This is for the first part of the question. Where the second part is, we don't need to go through the National Council to submit a law. We have our relationship with the parliamentarian themselves. So we submitted the law through parliamentarian. Her name is Neshat. We gave her the law. We conducted several meetings with her and round tables, and she is convinced with the law, and that's why she took it under her name to the parliament to have the discussion on it. And this is for the current the current parliament. The past parliament, it was a different MP, so a different parliamentarian, but currently it's under Neshwa's name.
نایرh جان شاید ترجمه کنم؟
بله بفرمایید اگه میخواید.
میگن که چون سوال شد که بین هماهنگی بین گروه‌های فعال و این شورای دولتی هماهنگی زنان وجود داره یا نه، ایشون میگن که نوع هماهنگی هستش ولی همیشه بین این که هم عشق باشه هم نفرت باشه هستش و از موقعیت همدیگه خبر دارن، ولی میگن که ارتباط مستقیم با نماینده های مجلس دارن، یعنی از طریق نماینده مجلس هستش که خواستای خودشون رو بیان میکنن و به مجلس میرسونن.
خب میتونین دوستان، الان من 2 نفر رو میبینم دستشون بالاست.
3 نفر.
4 نفر در واقع شدن.
نایرh جان 4 نفر دستشون بالاست.
بله بله.
اول رویا بلند کرده، بعد سوسن، بعد من، بعد روحی. رویا با اسم
به همون ترتیبی که رضوان جان گفتن بفرمایید. اول رویا بودن، بفرمایید. صدا نمیاد.
مرسی، خیلی ممنون. Thank you very much for your fantastic speech and talk. I would like to know what is the official age for consent for girls, and also is that the same as marriage age or not? Also, I would like to know is the law is purely based on Sharia and is a religious law that is running the parliament and the constitutions, or there are still space for some advanced or intellectual or some lawyers based on humanity, they can push through and try to fight and bring up some more humanitarian, I can't say, law to support women. Is that very orthodox and purely religion and Sharia? Or there is a fight here and there are some struggle for people who are more broad-minded to fight and support women?
So starting by the first question, so official age of marriage is the same as official age of consent, which is 18 years old. The thing is, we do not have an article on consent, so we don't have the terminology in the law. It's referred to they refer it to the child law where it's mentioned, or the child convention where it's mentioned somewhere for them, and they equate both as the same. So 18 is consent and it's consent and marriage. The law in Egypt itself, so the constitution says that Sharia principles are the main legislation source, okay? But we are also very, very, very attached to the French culture for some reason. Although they have colonized us for 3 years, but we're very attached to their legal system. So the legal or the laws that we're having right now, whether in the penal code or in the family law, it's a hybrid law. A legitimate mix of the French culture and the Sharia law, and all of a sudden we have this law where discrimination against women is justified by both the laws and by the constitution, unfortunately. So, for example, on the Zina law or the Zina article, what happened is this is unconstitutional because it goes against Islamic Sharia law. The fact that we have different punishment for men, and this is a pure case of constitutionality. But the problem here is that because of the French background, They are keeping it the way it is. And they are claiming that if we opened it up for discussion in the constitutional court, they are afraid that the Islamist groups are going to insist on having hudud, for instance.
Yeah. To keep the high.
So it's a mix of everything. The proposals we have, so we have a lot of lawyers who are progressive, and they are they want to have more humanitarian laws, for instance. All of this, we try to link it to the principles of Sharia. And this is the word that we use. The fact that the constitution says principles, it didn't say ahkam, it didn't say fiqh, it didn't say rulings. So the principles are its honesty, its equality, and this is what we're trying to refer to all the time. It's the principle, it's not the ruling itself. We're trying to work around it so far. When it comes to women, the state is very, very, very clinging to the Sharia part. But when it comes to investment, for example, or cyber crimes, it's like we can cancel Sharia altogether, and if it's in the favor of the community, then let's go with the modern interpretation of the law. And we have several articles in the investment law where they go against Sharia, but they just don't care.
I understand. Thank you very much.
ترجمه کنین روحی جان، شما ترجمه میکنید این اکسچنج رو بین این سوال و جواب رو؟
همش رو چیز نکردم نیره جان.
من بکنم
اگه شما یادتون موند. من سوال بعدی رو می‌نویسم.
تقریبا مفهومش سوالی که خانم رویا کردن این بود که مینیموم سن ازدواج و سن رضایت دادن به اصطلاح یکیه آیا و چند این، که جواب دادن که نه، قانون ما فرق نذاشته بین دادن رضایت برای یک رابطه کانسنت و یا در مورد ازدواج. در نتیجه هر دوش یکیه که 18 سالگیه. خب باز خیلی از این لحاظ از مال ما جلوتره که مال ما 13 سالگیه در واقع. و بعد پرسیدن که آیا، یعنی خانم رویا پرسیدن که آیا قوانین شما در مصر بر اساس شریعت کاملا یا مخلوطیه یا چجوریه؟ و جواب دادن که شریعت در قانون اساسی ذکر شده که یکی از منابع اصلیه، منتها هیچ جا احکام شریعت اسم برده نشده، بلکه اصول کلی شریعت اسم برده شده، که این میگه برای ما یه فضایی ایجاد میکنه که همیشه بحث کنیم که خب ما با این فلان چیز مثلا لزوما مغایرت با شریعت نداره. ولی از یه ورم دیگه منبع دیگه‌ای که برای در قانون اساسی هنوز هست، منبع قوانین دوران، یعنی قوانین فرانسه است که در دورانی که فرانسه در واقع مصر رو استعمار کرده بود و در اونجا قدرت داشت و قوانین رو هم گذاشته بود، میگه ما از اون قوانین هنوز استفاده میکنیم چون هنوز هستن و گاهی بهترن که ما اونا رو داشته باشیم. منتها بعضی از این قوانین اونجا برای زنها بده، یعنی قوانین باقی مونده از کپی برداری از قوانین فرانسه. فقط یه چیزی بر من روشن نشد. Excuse me, Neda, did you say that zina, you mentioned zina, how did that relate to French law? It's something that I couldn't get it. It wasn't clear to me.
Yeah, so the zina artist, so the difference in punishment between men and women, it's coming from the French colonization. At that time, so they were discriminating against both men and women.
So interestingly, they're the same in Sharia and French law.
No, so in Sharia, this is what we're saying, that if you want to have zina as a crime, then at least make it like the Sharia. Sharia said that both receive the same punishment. Why are you discriminating against women? Why women are getting 2 years? So if you're going to put them in jail anyways, both should get the 6 months, or both should get the 6, and the procedure, it should be the same, and the ashurut or the terms, they should be the same. Why the difference? This is the argument that we're making, regardless of the fact that we are having another, but this is going to give a state the heart attack of whether or not zina should be punished by jail or punished.
Right.
So we're not there.
Right. Again, to be clear, so according to the French law, zina is treated more unequally than
At that time,
your
yeah.
understanding of Sharia law.
Yeah.
That's interesting. So درسی هم یعنی ایشون دارن میگن که در واقع قانون زنایی که تفاوت میذاره در مورد پانیشمنت تنبیه مرد
Can I
و
just
زن.
explain one thing? By French law, I mean the Napoleon law. So we're
Napoleon,
referring
of
to
course.
Napoleon. It's not.
Well, it is like what 18th century, 19th
Exactly.
century. Right.
So
right,
they are
yeah.
not that modern yet.
Yeah. So این قوانین قدیمی فرانسه رو در واقع داره، دوران ناپلئون رو باقی مونده و خیلی ایشون میگن که بدتره از قوانین شریعت در این مورد، در مورد زنا. ولی این درسی که ما برای ما آموزنده است اینه که ببینیم چجوری پتریارکی مخصوص مسلمانان نیست، مخصوص اسلام نیست، در قوانین سکولار کشورهای دیگه هم بوده. منتها شانس اونا این بوده که مبارزه کردن، اون قوانین رو عوض کردن، فمینیسم تونسته از سرای خودشو بگذاره چون که دموکراسی وجود داشته. در فرانسه انقلاب شد علیه خیلی از این چیزا، ولی ما همچنان درگیر یا قوانین پوسیده دوران استبداد ناپلئون و امثال اون هستیم در مصر، یا قوانین پوسیده مرد سالار شریعت. Okay, thank you very much. That was very interesting. Historically speaking, and also not thinking that only Sharia is patriarchal.
Yeah.
Patriarchy has been very strong in many cultures. Okay, go ahead. سوال بعدی.
Is my turn?
فرمایید، خواهش می‌کنم.
Thank you. Thank you, Neda. It was very, very interesting. Although I know a lot about Egypt, but it was a lot of new information for me too. Neda, I would like you to ask you that, first of all, my first question is, we know that the Muslim Brotherhood is illegal in Egypt now, but there are Salafists who are very active and they are very legal in Egypt, especially Salafist women. I want to know how much, what kind of role they are playing in the feminist movement or in women's rights movement, because they are not feminists, and what they are doing right now. The second question is that the rate of FGM is different between what we have internationally and what I research and I know is much, much, much higher than that. We have this in the international statistic. What is the reason for that? And I would like you to explain the 60 signature rule, because you mentioned her here, and maybe it's good to know what this law is. I know that, but for my friends, maybe you have to explain more. Thank you very much.
Thank you. So with the
sorry, let her translate that.
ترجمه بکنم.
بفرمایید.
سوالی که سوسن جان کردن این که مسلم برادرهود غیر قانونیه اما هنوز فعال هستن. سوالشون اینه که چقدر به اصطلاح
نه روحی جان، سوال من این نبود، ببخشید.
سوال خود بگید، خودشون ترجمه کنید.
بله، اجازه بدید خودم ترجمه بکنم. من از ایشون پرسیدم که گروه‌های اسلامی در مصر هستن، اخوان المسلمین غیر قانونی شده. دیگه فعال نیست. عده‌ای از اعضاش الان خیلی از اعضاش در زندانه، اما گروهی هستن که افراطی تر از اخوان المسلمین هستن، به اینها میگن سلفیست ها. این سلفیست ها کاملا قانونی هستن و الان دارن فعالیت میکنن و زنان خیلی فعالی دارن برای دفاع از حقوق اسلامی در مصر. من از ایشون پرسیدم که نقش اینها رو در جنبش همین علیه خشونت و جنبش زنان توضیح بدن. دومی سوالی که از ایشون کردم این بود که آمار ختنه‌ای که ما در به اصطلاح آمار بین‌المللی داریم در مصر خیلی 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 پایین‌تر از اون هستش که واقعا در خود مصر اتفاق میفته و خود زنان مصر این آمار رو دارن. دلیلش رو از ایشون خواستم. سومی سوالی هم که کردم، در مصر قانونی هست به اسم قانون 60 امضا که حالا خودشون توضیح میدن اون قانون چیه، که خیلی در این حرکت هایی که اینها انجام میدن این قانون 60 امضا مهمه که در یک قسمت صحبتشون هم به این اشاره کرده بودن. حالا من این 3 تا سوال کردم، ایشون لطف میکنن جواب میدن.
Okay. Okay. So regarding the Muslim Brotherhood, so yes, as you said, they are illegal right now, but the Salafis are not, and the Salafis, they are not a group, so they are not organized under a certain group, for example, not like the Muslim Brotherhood. They are scattered everywhere, although they have a party which is called the Noor or the Light Party, where it has this Salafi mentality that rules. Salafis currently, they are playing it completely safe, meaning that they don't want to collide with the state because they don't want to end up in prison like the Muslim Brotherhood. So far, they are not as vocal as before. However, they play it on, they depend on the community. So they would, for example, argue in mosques, on TVs, that certain amendments would be against Sharia or certain rights would be against Sharia. And we are a conservative society anyway. So people, sometimes they would listen to them. But at this moment, to be honest, they do not have the power they had right after revolution just because they are too afraid to go to prison. So they are just keeping it low so far. But the state itself is conservative and they are rejecting most of the amendments that were proposing to combat violence, for example, or to amend certain articles in the penal code. So, for example, marital rape was completely demolished as an idea by even some of the progressive parties and political parties in Egypt. They were like, why would you call it marital rape? There is no rape in marital relationship. So we had to go through this discussion because it's a conservative society altogether. This is one part. With the rates of FGM or female genital mutilation, the state just produced a study or a paper saying that the rates are going much lower, okay? Which is partially true. It's not much lower, it's going lower, that's correct, even in our own, you know, documentation, for example. But the problem is, I believe in 2000, in the year 2000, the statistics were around 98% of Egyptian women between the ages of 15 till 49 underwent FGM. That was around the year 2000. So this is a huge percentage. And then it was reduced till 85, I think, a couple of years ago. Again, the same age group. What Egypt did in the last report is that they minimized the age group. They said that the 85% between the age of 15 till 49 was reduced in the age gap between 17 till I think 30 or even 9, so from 17 till 19. So this age group is completely different from the other age group. And the younger generation were documenting lesser number of FGM in younger generations. That's true. But if we compared the same age group the numbers are not going to be very, they are actually going to be very similar. They are not going to be this huge gap. So from 85 to 30 something, this is not correct comparison even. So this is the play Egypt trying to do right now, is that by claiming that from the ages of 11 till 19 or 17 till 19, the FGM is 30 something, while the correct comparison should be between the ages of 17 till 45. This is one problem. The other problem is most of FGM cases, they are not documented because it's illegal in Egypt currently. So families, they do not report it because they are the one pushing it. And girls, especially if they are young, they don't want to report their own parents. So there is this huge also problem of reporting when it comes to FGM. And even if a girl wants to report to her family, she's stopped by the fact that her family is going to go to prison. And that's why we're saying that prison should be stopped for at least the family, the direct family, the father and mother. It should be done in a different way. The punishment should be in a different way, just to make sure that girls are able to report as well. That's the discrepancy. As for the 60 signatures, for any law to be discussed in the general session of the parliament, it needs to be submitted by a parliament member. But the parliament member needs to collect 60 signatures from other parliamentarians in order to submit it to the legislative committee in the parliament. And then the legislative committee sends it to the president of the parliament for this law to be discussed in the public session. Up till this moment, we are at the point where the 60 signatures have been collected for both the family law and for the comprehensive law to combat violence, but they are not sent to, and they are sent to the president of the parliament, that the president of the parliament, he didn't post them for discussion in the public session.
مرسی. تا اینجایی که من نوشتم صحبت ایشون رو بگم. در مورد سلفی ها میگن گروه سازمان یافته ای نیستن و حزبی دارن به اسم حزب نور، ولی نمیخوان که با حکومت درگیر بشن و نمیخوان که به زندان برن مثل اخوان المسلمین. به این دلیل برخوردی که به شکلی که به اصطلاح به گرفتن و زندان رفتنشون منجر بشون برخورد رو ندارن، در حال حاضر ندارن. اوکی، در مورد ختنه میگن که تعداد ختنه زنان کاهش پیدا کرده. در سال 2000 گفته میشد که حدود 98% زنان ختنه شدن، اما این آمار بسیار پایین اومده. ولی اگر گروه های سنی
90% یا 98% ببخشید
کجا؟ در سال 2000 98%
بود خانم توحیدی. سال
2000
98% بود، رسیده به 85%. ایشون گفتن که منم پیدا کردم اینو.
این بین گروه های سنی 17 تا 45 ساله این آماری رو که میگن و میگن که اگر گروه های سنی رو با هم مقایسه بکنیم تفاوت آنچنانی نکرده در واقع آمار ختنه و ختنه ها اکثرا گزارش نمیشن، یعنی دختران گزارش نمیدن به این دلیل که خانوادهشون پدر مادرشون زندان میرن. به این دلیل هستش که خیلی از موارد ختنه اصولا گزارش داده نمیشه. و بعد سوالی که سوسن جان کرده بودن در مورد اون 60 امضا این هستش که اگر که یک قانونی بخواد به مجلس بره و یک وکیل مجلس اونو بخواد ارائه بده، باید 60 نفر از وکلا اون قانون رو در واقع امضا بکنن یا توافق بکنن که تا در مجلس مطرح بشه و بعد تصویب بشه. بنابراین این قانون 60 امضا به اونجا برمیگرده.
من یه توضیح کوتاه راجع به این FGM بدم. ایشون گفتن که در اصل قانونی که یعنی آماری که برای FGM بود بین سن 17 سال تا 49 سال بود، اما کاری که دولت اومد کرد تو دولت جدید اومدن سن کردن بین مثلا 19 سال تا 30 سال. یعنی یک گروه زیادی رو از دور این مسئله خارج کردن، تو آمار نگنجوندن به همین دلیل که بتونن آمار رو بیارن پایین. ولی در واقع آمار هنوز همون حدود 82% الان در مصر، یعنی آماری که گروه های زنان دارن بین 82 تا 85%، به خصوص در منطقه هایی که خیلی روستایی تر و رورال تر هستن خیلی درصد بالاست هنوز.
Ask a question, Neda, about this FGM, female genital mutilation.
Yeah.
What feminists are doing about that? Are there any attempt to change or include in school curriculum educational, parts to educate young girls and families against it? دارم میپرسم که خود فمینیست ها در این باره چه کار میکنن؟ آیا تلاش کردن که آموزش در متون درسی آموزش هایی گنجونده بشه در مورد زیانهای این سنت ختنه زنان؟ بفهم. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, thank you. So what happened so far is that feminists, they are, as organizations or as movements, what we are doing right now is raising awareness campaigns all over the social media in marginalized areas, for example, where we actually go to certain communities and we talk to them about FGM, about why they should not be doing that to their girls, the concerns, and we discuss the concerns they have, because it's related, of course, to many cultural aspects. For example, some women, they would believe if their girls did not go under circumcision, she will grow a penis. So we need to tackle such issues because it's really rooted in the in the culture itself. Also, we are pushing for it to be included in the school curriculum, but we do not have so far we don't have a comprehensive sexuality education in Egypt. We as organizations, we go to these schools and we do the sessions for younger girls and younger boys. The problem is that currently the state is very much concerned on sexuality education about the LGBT, so they don't think of FGM, they're not thinking of other, important issues as well. This is what we have been trying to do so far, making sure that all the sessions are translated, for example, for people who cannot hear or cannot talk, all of these, for people with disabilities, hearing disabilities, for example, to make sure that all sectors of the society have the ability to understand why FGM is a problem, why FGM needs to stop. We managed to get the law finally amended on criminalizing FGM altogether, but still the part where we are pushing for is to stop the prison punishment for the family. It needs a different punishment in order to make sure that the girls are able to report the cases.
But you are allowed to go to school and educate people. I mean, or if you say wage a campaign against it, is government gonna prevent you from that?
On FGM, no. They are, on the other hand, they don't mind us talking about FGM. This is what they want us to talk about, but from a developmental point of view, not from a rights point of view. So this is also the game they are trying to play.
So they're afraid that you may also include rights of sexual minorities. Is that their concern, or?
Well, this, even for us as an organization, we're not discussing the sexuality rights for sexual minorities right now. We're trying to take it step by step. So at least we're trying with, starting with FGM, preventing sexual assault, access to sexual reproductive health and rights. We're trying to start by this. As an organization, we haven't stepped up till the sexual minorities issues, but even if we want to do this, it's banned by the law because they are going to consider it as blasphemy and debauchery. So it's completely, this is another crime for them.
There's no organized LGBTQ.
No, there are. There are, and yeah, there are, but they are not registered. So they are completely,
informal.
you know, working, informal and working on what we call under the table.
Underground movement.
Yeah, underground, sorry. We call it, this is the exact translation Arabic, under the table. Sorry.
پرسیدیم که آیا فمینیستا کاری میکنن برای مبارزه با ختنه، گفتن که تلاش میکنیم و دولت هم مانع نمیشه. ولی در مورد حقوق اقلیت‌های جنسی میگن ما خودمونم کاری نمی کنیم الان، چون که قدم به قدم داریم حرکت میکنیم، ولی هستن گروه های اکتیویست های مربوط به حقوق جنسیتی و تفاوت های جنسی و اینا که تلاش میکنن منتها خیلی زیر میزی و غیر رسمی، چون خیلی تحت فشار. اوکی. Next question. خانومه فکر کنم روحی نوبتش بود یا رضوان جان شما بودین؟
Well, thank you very much, Neda, for your presentation. You provided us great information. Thank you.
Thank you.
My question is, religion works more strongly or tradition, or both are the same? What tactics women's rights activists use to deal with them or struggle with them? Yeah, thank you. سوال من این بود که مذهب قوی تر عمل میکنه یا سنت در مصر و چه تاکتیک های فعالان جنبش زنان استفاده میکنن که حالا مبارزه کنن یا نمیدونم فارسی مثلا بگیم معامله کنن باش، بالاخره مبارزه کنن با مذهب یا سنت ها، چون ما خودمون هم اینو تو کمپین داریم.
Yes. So for Egyptian movements, it's actually, or the organizations and groups in Egypt, we're using different tactics because surprisingly, actually tradition is much stronger than religion, even if they are trying to link both. But if tradition is stronger in certain elements more than religion, usually traditions win the game. But of course, they would put, you know, the religious hat on it. As for feminists, we do different tactics. So us, for example, as an organization, we would say that, okay, you're going to throw religion in our face. We're going to use the same arguments against you. So we are okay completely with dealing with religion, and we are working on, for example, what we call the progressive interpretation of Sharia or whatever. As long as Article 2 says that of the Constitution says that we have to deal with religion, we will deal with religion, but we're making it our way. This is one tactic, for example. Other organizations, for example, they would go with a no to religion altogether. And it's very important to have that voice as well. There are the super secular groups in Egypt, which actually it's the majority of the feminists in Egypt. They would go super secular in the fact that they would ask the state to eradicate Article 2 altogether, that they don't want to have religion in the discussion altogether. And this is a very important voice as well in order to have the balance. So at least, again, it depends on the tool we're using. So for us, we're going to use all the tools regardless of how they look. Others would say that, no, let's bring them to our ground and let's discuss based on our grounds, for example. Thank you.
بسته است.
ببینید در مورد سوالی که رضوان جان کرد که مذهب قوی تری یا سنت، ایشون میگم به احتمال خیلی زیاد سنت قوی تر از مذهب، با اون که مذهب خب ممکنه در خود سنت هم باشه و خودشون به عنوان یه سازمان میگن که ما با همون زبان صحبت میکنیم، زبانی که فهمیده بشه و سازمان‌های فمینیستی هم هستن که به کلی به مذهب نمیگن و اصولا انکار مذهب در کاربرد در جامعه و صدای قوی هم دارن در این زمینه، صدای قوی هم دارن که اونجا من نوشتم.
چیزی که من متوجه شدم که باز برای ما جالبه، I'm going to mention one again similarity and the similar challenge we have had in Iran. We also had women's groups who tried to, as you said, turn the table against them when they use Islam to justify discrimination and violence. We said, well, we can interpret Islam differently and we come up with more, less discriminatory and more egalitarian interpretations of Islam. But there are also women who say we just don't go there, and there are super secularists, as you said, who just stay within the secular framework. They don't use Islamic framework. And I like your approach that you said, and both are good to have because they can keep the balance. And in Iran, it took us a long time to agree that both voices exist and let's recognize them, and rather than fighting between us, they each can have their own impact. So, but you don't fight with each other, it looks like.
No, we do have, at least the majority, we're okay with using different tools. I mean, even the tools, they are not limited to using religion. For example, sometimes it's even how close you are to the government, what kind of language we're going to use. Are we going to be critical or more friendly? So, I mean, all approaches are at that stage. As long as we are on the same human rights level, at least, we're fine with it. So we have also reached this common understanding, but right after the revolution, because we were cornered as feminists, and they were going to take our rights away from us. So we were like, we have to stand here and work together.
ببخشید نیر جان، یه سوال هم توی چت هست.
So we have Rohi.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much for your informative speech. Thank you.
Thank you.
My question have been answered by different questions my friends mentioned. But I want to know, every year, how many women are killed due to honor killings or killed by the male relatives? This is one question. Another question is, what is the situation with feminists? Are feminists allowed to have their own organization and their activities free? I want to know these two questions, please. Thank you.
Thank you. Maybe you can explain NGO movement, NGO law in Egypt.
Yeah. Do you want to translate the questions first?
سوال روی جان این بود که چند نفر زن در مصر به تحت قتلهای ناموسی کشته میشن. سوال دوم چی بود روی جان؟
سوال این بود در مورد فمینیست، آیا فمینیست ها واقعا میتونن سازمان خودشون داشته باشن و آزادانه فعالیت کنن در هر زمینه ای؟
Okay, so for the first question, we do not have recordings or official recordings of honor killings altogether. First of all, the state does not recognize the word honor in the law, and that's why for them, as long as it's not in the law, it's not an honor crime. That's the whole philosophy. And again, when it comes to how many women were killed by their male relatives, again, there is a problem of accessing information. The last, you will find the data, for example, coming as number of women who were killed, point. Killed by whom, killed how, on what grounds. This is not segregated in the data they are disseminating. They are just, it's one block. And since the end of 90s, actually, we do not have even like proper numbers on how many women were killed by, in general, the what we call the criminal research. It's now, it goes to the Ministry of Interior, and it's not accessed by the public anymore. That's since the end of 90s, beginning of 2000s, and they haven't allowed us to look at the numbers. So we have to deal with the numbers that we receive from the National Council, which is again very limited. It's not segregated by crime at all points. When it,
بخشید ناهید لطفاً تلفنتون، لطفاً میکروفونتون رو ببندید.
Yeah, and the other point on the feminist organizations, yes. So yes, we are allowed to have feminist or women's rights organizations. In principles, it's applicable, okay, because we are allowed to register. The problem is the limitations they put on us in order to work on certain issues, for example. So we are going to work on violence against women. For them, it's fine, okay, as long as we're talking about FGM, electronic abuse, something in that realm where the state itself is trying to do something as well. That this is the mentality. But if we are going to talk about marital rape, for instance, incest, we find a huge drawback or setback from the state, because for them, it's like this is a no-no zone. Do not go there. Do not claim that we have incest. It's a crime or two all over the year. Although in our organization, we systematically, at least we have 2 to 3 cases per week on incest. That for them, it's not a phenomenon. It's a crime or two throughout the year. But this is the kind of limitations that we're facing. That's why we have to alter our work. So we cannot work on political participation of women, but we can work on public participation of women. So we have to alter the wordings that we use all the time. But the essence, it's like we try to disseminate or at least transfer our mentality to our audience and to the target groups.
Thank you.
Thank you.
بله، گزارش از تعداد قتلهای ناموسی میگن که مشخص نیست که در سال چقدر قتل زنان در واقع تحت عنوان قتلهای ناموسی هستش. فقط آمار داده میشه که این تعداد زن کشته شدن، اگر آمار دقیقی داده بشه. سازمان‌های فمینیستی اجازه دارن که کار بکنن، ولی مشکل اینه که چهارچوب دارن که باید در اون چهارچوب گنجونده بشن و نامه‌هایی هم که به کار میبرن تحت اون نامه مشخص کار بکنن. در مورد تجاوز در ازدواج اصلا شناخته شده نیستش، به رسمیت شناخته نمیشه. تجاوز به فرد در خانواده، نمیدونم ما اصطلاح فارسیشو چی داریم،
زنای با محارم.
اونم به کل شناخته نمیشه.
در واقع، ولی خب دیگه.
بله. و مشارکت سیاسی زنان هم شناخته نمیشه، اما مشارکت عمومیشون شناخته میشه. نمیدونم حالا این تفاوت چجوری؟
ما باید بگیم مشارکت اجتماعی، نباید بگیم مشارکت سیاسی، چون
اجتماعی درست.
There's a question now I see on the chat section from Fatima.
I was answering the question.
She's asking any suggestion of active feminist collectives in Cairo. فاطمه از قاهره میپرسه که آیا گروه های فمینیستی رو میتونید اینجا معرفی کنید، به ما توصیه کنین که بشناسیم. Yes, please.
Yeah. So I already wrote in the chat that there are several organizations.
Okay.
There are several organizations. These are some names on top of my mind so far. New Women Foundation, Women in Memory, Barah Amen, that translates to Safe Space, Sanad, which is support. So these are some organizations. They are also different in the age group. So Barah and Sanad, they are more of younger feminists, while Women in Memory Forum, New Women Foundation, older feminists. So yeah, and they are all online.
سوال این بود که گروه های فمینیستی، یعنی سوال از خود قاهره شده بود که گروه های فمینیستی نام ببرند که در مصر کیا هستن و ایشون میگن که زیادن، گروه های متعدد فمینیستی هستن، همه رو میشه آنلاین پیدا کرد.
اسم بردن مثل براه آمن، سیف اسپیس، سند و امثال. اوکی. خب سوال دیگه ای داریم؟
There is a question from Zar.
Roya, yes, from Azar or Roya. Yeah.
Roya, okay.
I think she forgot to put down her hand. Because
I actually, thank you. When there was a question about FGM, I just wanted to say to Susan, I'm sure she has a lot of information about it, but in any countries that FGM announced illegal, the number of the announced practice is going lower. We had the same problem in England because whilst I was working, I was very active on FGM, and I started off in northeast of England, the campaign against it. And the problem is that, as it was mentioned by our speaker, as soon as we say it is illegal, the children's panicking to report it, but we won in register it as and announced it as illegal because it passed on 2011. Otherwise, we couldn't persecute any family that they are practicing it behind a closed door. Anyway, that's all. Now I have the chance. I was going to say, I thought it would be related at the time that you made the question, but thank you for giving me the time. We had the same problem.
Yeah, so it's very similar. Yeah, it's very similar when it comes to reporting. Everyone panics, to be honest.
Exactly. But what we did was we had a lots of work in nurseries and schools and universities as well, to educate people about it. And then especially with nursery nurse, youth workers, we trained them how to identify the signs and report it.
عبقری، میکروفونتون بازه، صدا میاد.
Yeah, sorry, can you repeat your last question, Azar? Or it
was not a question, there was comments.
Just a comment, okay, sorry. Sorry. Yeah. So let me answer the question on the chat because this is going to take more than for me to write on abortion rights. So abortion is the question on the chat. It says, has abortion been discussed? So we haven't discussed abortion, but there are active groups in Egypt focusing on abortion rights. Abortion in Egypt is a very complex issue because culturally it's accepted. In our culture, At least for the older generation, it was accepted. And then came the Islamist groups where they said abortion is not allowed and this is haram. And so our culture, the Egyptian culture, translated that into, okay, it's haram to abort the first child. We can think about other children later. This is how people thought of it. But still, even if they want to abort other, second, third, fourth child, they usually are like, they will find a lot of people telling them that it's haram, you cannot do this. On legalities, here it's where they have a huge no. So abortion is not allowed at all under any circumstances, except if the mother's health is in danger. So I cannot just go to my gynecologist saying that I want to abort my baby. It has to be like, I have to prove that whether I'm bleeding or my life is in danger. However, there are doctors who do it, and they made the woman sign that she was bleeding. For example, she came to the clinic bleeding or she came to the hospital bleeding. So she would sign it off and everyone is happy about it. It's, we have this loop of making everything illegal, legal somehow. The problem here, or the main argument, is since abortion is already being done in private clinics, it takes a lot of money. So the argument is that poor women cannot access the same rights and they die because of abortion, of unwanted pregnancies. The current push from the feminist, at least organizations, is that let's start step by step. Since it's accepted somehow socially, let's allow women who were raped of getting safe abortion. At least let's start by that, and then taking other steps step by step. But yeah, so this is the complex issue. At least the prosecution, they have the right to sign off abortion slips, by the way. So if a woman wants to abort and she was raped, for instance, we can get a permission from the prosecution. Up till this moment, 0 prosecutions gave us such permits. They don't want to deal with abortion at all. Again, most of them are men, or actually all of them are men so far. So they think that, so I just put the child in an orphanage or something, that's fine. They don't get the psychological efforts and the psychological harm women get because of unwanted pregnancies. It just, they don't see it.
شما اینو ترجمه کنین روی جان، ولی بعد بگین آخرین سواله. I think we are at the end of our time. So you just please translate.
بله، یه سوال در مورد ابورشن، سقط جنین شد. ایشون جواب میدن که تعداد گروه‌های هستن که فعالن. به طور کلی مسئله سقط جنین در فرهنگ مورد تایید هست، اما از نظر قانونی اجازه ندارن، یعنی در قانون اجازه داده نشده، مگر اون که در مواردی که مادر تحت خطر باشه یا خونریزی زیاد داشته باشه به بیمارستان مثلا مراجعه بکنه. و بعد موارد غیرقانونی سقط جنین، اونایی که پول دارن میتونن پنهانی این کار رو انجام بدن و میمونه مادرانی یا زنانی که پول ندارن و مجبور میشن که بسازن با اون بچه. حتی الان سعی میکنن سازمان‌های زنان که قدم به قدم پیش برن برای اجازه گرفتن سقط جنین. اول زنانی که مورد تجاوز قرار میگیرن، اگر بشه که اجازه گرفت که اونا بچه هاشونو، یعنی حاملگی رو سقط کنن، ولی میگن که بسیار مشکلی که این اجازه گرفته بشه. و به نظر میاد از چیزی که من اینجا فهمیدم این که انجام میشه اما به اشکال مختلف ولی قانونی نیستش، به هر صورت قانونی نیستش سقط جنین.
ضمن گفتن که اسلامگراها کار رو مشکل‌تر کردن، چون اسلامگراها اومدن گفتن این گناهی و غیر شرعیه و زنان ولی اینجور تعبیر کردن که خب حتما بعد از بچه اول رو سقط نکنید. یعنی دوباره اینجا نقش مذهب رو هم فراموش نکنید. Okay. I think we are, it's 11:03 already, 3 minutes past 11. I think we need to let Neda wrap up, or if you have anything to add to what you have said, or we don't want to take more of your time.
No, thank you. I'm so sorry if I talk too much. I tend to elaborate more. I'm really sorry about that. But yes, thank you so much for having me again. Please, if you have any questions, just you can share my email with the team, Suzanne, if you can do that. I'm here anytime. If you have any questions, please let me know.
We keep the
Very
contact,
much.
Neda. I'm sure we need
Yes,
you.
Yes, we should strengthen our solidarity and our connection and do networking, transnational networking. We are dealing with common cause and common issues.
Yes.
Okay, thank you very much. I learned
so much.
your lecture too, and it was so good to hear about growing feminist movement in Egypt. It looks like it's growing.